Here's a story about how I failed, what happened, how I dealt with the situation, what I learned from it, and how I try to keep those learnings in mind in everything that I do. I'm going to be talking specifically about my failure in music. And in order to get the story started, I guess we have to go to the beginning, right? So, how did I get involved in music? Well, my earliest memories of being interested in music are things like pestering my parents to get me a recorder. A recorder is a kind of it's a like a whistle type instrument. It's a wind instrument that is often taught in schools. And I remember really loving cartoon music, you know, when the cartoons start, there's an intro. I remember really loving the soundtracks to video games, and I would play them really loudly. I went through this period where I was fascinated with the bagpipes. I don't know why. That's just bizarre. Yeah, I just loved the bagpipes for a while. But there's one memory that really stands out, and that is when I was in primary school. It was the final year of primary school, and there was going to be this performance recital type thing at the end of the year because we were all leaving primary school. We were graduating, or whatever you want to call it, to go to the big school, secondary school, or what, you know, in North America you call high school. And there was going to be music and dancing and all kinds of stuff. But at the end, there was going to be a choir performance, and they needed somebody to sing the main song solo on their own. They would be backed by a choir, but they were leading this, you know, they were singing the main lyrics and melody, and they needed a volunteer. And for some reason, I volunteered to do that. Now, this is completely bizarre because I did I wasn't singing in a choir. I was not trained in any way. I had never, as far as I'm aware, had never shown an inclination towards wanting to sing. And back then, as I am now, I'm a kind of a quiet person, a more introverted character. So if you had to place bets on which kid is going to volunteer to sing a song for this recital, nobody would have placed a bet on me. I'm sure of it. I remember having to meet up with a teacher who played the song for me on the piano, and I had to sing along. I'm not sure if that was an audition, so I don't know if there were other children that applied as well. But anyway, I got the part, so I had to sing this song in front of a room full of teachers and adults, parents, and all the other children. And I don't know why I felt this impulse to do that. I can't remember if I felt nervous at the time or anything like that. I remember my parents telling me that I did really well and they enjoyed it. So that is my one standout memory of being interested in music as a child. Now, before I continue, I just want to talk about this tendency that we have as humans, right? We want to post rationalize things that happened in the past, right? We want to make sense of the world, and so what we will do is we will look at the past, and we will pick out things and say, okay, A happened in the present because of B, C, D, E, F in the past. And so it's easy to say, oh, look, Cornelis, he was always interested in music. He was destined to become a musician. But I have to say, look, I was interested in all kinds of things as a child. I was in, like any kid, right? I was interested in dinosaurs and space and rockets and ancient history. So if today I, you know, was a archaeologist or a rocket scientist, then I could look back at my childhood and say, yes, the signs were there early on in my childhood. I don't know. But for some reason, I'm really into music, and yes, I showed some interest. But like I said, I had many interests, and on top of that, I'm not one of these people that grew up in a musical family. Sometimes you hear these famous musicians and they say, "Oh yes, I was surrounded by music growing up, and my parents played instruments and all this kind of stuff." Nothing like my childhood was the opposite of that. I'm so grateful for my parents. I had a great childhood, but it was not filled with music. Yes, they had CDs back in the day. You had CDs, right? But they weren't constantly playing music. We would often go on drives and not play the radio, right? We weren't one of those kinds of families. And in my entire extended family, so I'm talking all my aunts and all my uncles, and I have many of them, nobody plays music except two. So I have an aunt and an uncle that play the piano and the organ, but I don't think I ever touched the piano. I know they had a piano at home, and maybe I pressed a key once or twice, but I never sat down and played it. So I don't have this big musical background, yet for some reason I was attracted to music, but I had many interests. But like I said, I would say, okay, that the one standout moment was me volunteering as an 11 or 12-year-old to perform a song, to sing a song in front of people. So that is the one thing that I can point towards and say, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, no, my parents didn't encourage me after that. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, children have all kinds of interests. So why should they think, oh, this boy wants to be a singer, let's get him singing lessons? No, I mean, I have many interests. Yeah, some people grow up in a family where if they show an interest in driving, then it's like, right, we're gonna get you into go-karting from the age of 6 so that you can become a Formula One driver in 15 years, right? Or golf like Tiger Woods. So many, the Formula One drivers, so many of them started really young. Same with golfers and tennis players and all that kind of stuff. So some people grow up in that kind of situation, but that is not the norm. And many people that are successful in life in their chosen career or craft or whatever actually got started relatively late. And I actually read a book about how most quote unquote successful people, right, were more generalists until mid-teens or late teens before they specialized in something. So I'm getting distracted here. That's a whole nother topic to talk about, right? But the point I want to bring up, the point of everything I've said so far is that my background is not a musical background. I did not seem to have any particular talent for music. People didn't encourage me to get into music whatsoever. But as I said, I did this. I sang in front of an audience. For some reason, I wanted to do that. But then that kind of went dormant for a while, as far as I remember, until I became a teenager. And then, like a lot of teenagers, I got really into music, specifically rock and metal and stuff, and punk music. In secondary school, in the first couple of years, or at least the first year, music is mandatory as a subject. And I did not enjoy music class. We had to play the xylophone and just silly things like that, maybe a little bit of keyboard, but it wasn't a very practical music class. And we had exams throughout the year, and basically what ended happening is that my average was a fail. So I failed. And I remember specifically failing one exam, and I was so angry, I was so mad, because I was explaining to my parents and to my uncles and everyone how illogical it was, because this test wasn't about musical ability or anything like that. It was this stupid picture memorization test, and I won't go into all the details because it's boring for people to hear me rant about this. All these years later, I'm still ranting about it. But yeah, it was a stupid test that was illogical in all kinds of ways, and yeah, and I failed it. And so I failed music completely, that class, so that, you know, I cannot continue doing music. And like at the time, I'm not sure if I was so upset about not being able to do music. To be honest, I don't think that was the case. It was more that I didn't like the class, how it was taught, and I didn't like the exams and how they, you know, what they were testing, and it was all just didn't make sense to me. It was illogical, and I just didn't like that. So I was more upset about that than the fact that I couldn't continue doing music class, because I wasn't playing any instruments at this time. But right around that time, maybe a year later or a year or two later, I had some friends in school, so this is secondary school, high school, who were playing in a band. So they played guitar and drums and bass and everything. And that was really cool. I thought, wow, that's so cool. They're playing real music in a band. And but I thought, oh, I'm too old to play an instrument, to learn to play an instrument, right? I'm 17, or 16, 17. I'm so old, right? But what happened is that another friend wanted to join the band, but he didn't play an instrument. So the other guys were like, okay, if you learn to play the guitar, then you can join the band. So he practiced for a year. I don't know if he got lessons as well, but he got really good and he was able to join the band. And I thought that was so amazing. I thought, wow, he learned to get really good in a year. Then I can do it as well. So I asked those guys, okay, where's the guitar shop? Where can I go? And they told me in the big city. This is the address. Go there. So I got the bus to the big city, went to the shop. I was nervous. I didn't know what I was doing, but the guy in the shop, he was really friendly and really nice, and he said, okay, here's a guitar for beginners. And I had all my pocket money with me that I'd been saving since I was a kid, which is probably not much, but I'd never spent it on anything, right? And I bought a guitar that I still have to this day. It's called a Serena Superior, and it's a knockoff Stratocaster, so it looks like a Stratocaster shape, right? And yeah, I don't know how much I paid for it, but probably the equivalent today would be like £75 or £100, or what is it, $100, $125. It was like, it's like really cheap, right? But I had it for a long time, and I played it. I loved it. I think I got an amp with it at the time as well, and some books. Yeah, and I went home and I taught myself how to play guitar, and went on the internet, of course, and learned a lot from that. And yeah, I was really into it. So, you know, it's interesting how I saw this positive example of somebody that did it, and I thought, okay, wow, it is possible, and it doesn't matter that I failed a class or failed an exam. That has nothing to do with actually making music. So that's the first lesson. The first lesson there is school. You know, I don't want to hate on school, but it's easy to hate on school. But it's school is a specific kind of institution that is trying to do a specific kind of thing, which has some overlap with teaching people things. Some overlap. It's not. I wouldn't say it's the most efficient method of teaching children how to learn things, or especially teaching them how to learn things themselves, which is the most important thing that you can learn in life. And you have to kind of pick that up. yourself or from your parents or somewhere outside of school. I don't know. Maybe school is different these days, but back in my day, it was like they're not really teaching you how to learn things. You have to kind of figure that out yourself. It's all about the main thing that teach you is like how to pass exams. Yeah, which is yeah. Anyway, so don't, as I think Mark Twain said it, don't ever let school get in the way of your education. That's what he said. Don't ever let school get in the way of your education, or something along those lines. And that's the first lesson that I've taken to heart. Okay, I failed music in school, so what? I'm going to teach myself how to play guitar, and I'm going to sing. And very early on, I was interested in writing songs. I'm sure that once I'd learned my first 3 chords, I was writing songs. In fact, actually, there's another memory that I have, which is shortly before I bought the guitar. I remember sitting in class, and I remember it was one of those study periods where you can listen to music while you work. And I remember thinking, this song doesn't have very good lyrics. I bet I could write better lyrics than this. So I started writing lyrics for a song that already existed, right? I used the melody and wrote different lyrics. And I thought, wow, I bet I'd be an amazing songwriter. But at that time, I didn't know how to play an instrument. So when I picked up the guitar, immediately, very quickly, I was like, right, I'm going to write my own songs. And as a teenager, I played in 2 bands in total, but it was really hard to get it was really hard to get to the stage of actually playing gigs. We did play a couple of gigs with both bands, but the amount of effort it took to learn, write songs, learn the songs, rehearse, find a gig, it was, as anybody that's ever tried to be in a band, it was 99% effort and sweat and tears, and then at the end you get you had a gig, and then you break up or something like that, which is the story of most bands, right? And I never even considered really for a moment that I could do something with music. I was living in a little town, and I just thought, and I didn't particularly think that I had any talent for it. I really enjoyed doing it, but I didn't think, okay, I had this weird idea, like I said early on, that I'd be a great songwriter, but then I wrote some okay songs that I liked, but I didn't think of myself as, okay, I'm actually good. It's more of an aspiration, I guess, a weird kind of oh yeah, a weird conflicting belief, oh yeah, I bet I'd be really good at it, and I am quite good, but I'm not as good as I know I can be, right? So I went off to do other things, and had worked at jobs and traveled and all that kind of stuff. But always, music was always with me, and I was always playing guitar, and I was always writing songs. And then one day, I was in Thailand. I was sitting on a beach in Thailand, and I was there with some friends for a couple of months. And I wrote a piece of music that I thought, okay, this is actually a legitimately good piece of music. And I still have that piece of music. I still haven't written words for it. Maybe I'll try this year. But that piece of music, I thought, okay, this is actually good. And I came back to London, and I really dedicated myself to writing songs and getting better at that. And I got to the point where I was writing songs, and I thought, okay, these are actually good songs. And now I'm world famous and have a successful music career. No, I don't, right? So this is the other part, the next failure of my life of being in music, which is that I make music, I write and record music, I release music, I play in a band, I perform at open mic nights, or sometimes I perform solo. Excuse me. But I don't make any money out of it. I don't have a career in music. I'm not a professional musician. I do freelance work in marketing. So I'm still a failure. I failed in music school, and now I'm still a failure. But here's the thing. When I really started spending more time on this, I had to be aware that this is the standard result for 99% of musicians in the world that aspire to, not let alone all musicians, but the musicians that would like to be professional musicians. A small percentage of those achieve it, let alone the percentage of people that do it with original music. It's tiny percentage of people ever build an audience, ever make any kind of money from it, let alone a good living, let alone become world famous. So I always knew that, and I always thought to myself, well, I get so much out of it in terms of personal fulfillment and making friends and the pure enjoyment of it and mastery of the instruments and self-expression and all those kinds of things. So I always accepted that and was like, right, even knowing that I'm not going to get anything else out, no material benefit from it, as it were, do I still enjoy it? Do I still get all those benefits out of it that I just mentioned? And yes, that's, and I'm happy doing that. And that's enough. But of course, I still have aspirations. I still think, wow, like, what if loads of people enjoyed my music? What if I could build an audience? And that's always, it cannot be the only thing that motivates you. Like I said, you have to have all the other things I talked about, the fulfillment and the community and the self-development and the enjoyment of playing music for its own sake. You have to have that. If you don't have that, then nothing's going to happen. You cannot sustain yourself over a long period of time with the hope and wish that you're going to get famous or money or anything like that, because it won't help you. Or I think there's very, very few people that can be motivated just by that alone. I don't know. I could think of maybe one or two, but if I judge their actual musical output, I'm not quite sure that they enjoy music and they're more in it for the fame and money. So like, some people can do it, but I'm not one of those people. And I think most people are not like that. They need the other things to motivate them, right? So, what was my point? What was I saying? Well, that I kind of resigned myself to failure from the start, in a way. And now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Maybe honestly, maybe that was not the right way to go about things. Maybe I should have had more self-belief. But that doesn't mean that I'm not doing my best and that I don't have ambition for myself. It's just that I kind of recognize it's all a big long shot. And I'm going to shoot my shot as best as I can. And if something comes out of it, then I'll be super grateful. But I cannot rely on that for some kind of end goal. Because if it doesn't happen, then I'm going to get really depressed, right? So, but it's funny, right? Because, it's interesting. I'm getting small wins along the way. And that is I can't lie, that's definitely keeping me motivated. The fact I talk to friends and I say, look, back in the day, if you were a musician and, well, first of all, it was very expensive to go to a studio and put out music on records and vinyl or even CDs and that kind of stuff. You could do it, but it was expensive, and your final products would not be as good as quality as the top tier music that you hear on the radio. So the other option was to, you know, to get signed by a record label. But the worst case scenario could be, for example, that you either invested your own money into making music, or you were signed to a record label and then you got dropped, and then that all you had to show for it would be the memories, which is a great thing, of course, and a bunch of CDs or vinyl records in your garage that nobody ever hears. And now the worst case scenario is that you have music online that can be discovered forever, right? So for me, that in itself is great, right? Because the music's always going to be out there for people to discover. And then on top of that, you have the memories, playing music, making music with your friends, the people that you meet along the way through music. So that's there as well. But now I'm lucky enough to be in a situation, and it depends on where you are. Like, some of you out there might laugh, but for me, these are milestones, right? Because I think it's 6 months ago or so, I reached 100 monthly listeners on Spotify. And I think that's really cool, because I think about, like, you know, when I hit 10 monthly listeners, right? I thought, wow, there's 10 people in the world on average that are listening to my music every 28 days. So a month, it's 28 days in the Spotify dashboard, right? And then it's 25, 50, and then 100. So 100 people around the world every month are listening to my music. So if 100, why not 1,000? Why not 10,000? It's a proof of it's like in the tech world, right? Proof of concept, minimal viable product. If one person is interested in buying your product, why not 2? Why not 5? Why not 10? Why not 100? And I feel like I'm in that situation now where 100 monthly listeners right now. Right at this point, if you go on Spotify, it says something ridiculous like 800 monthly listeners, but that's because I got added to a dodgy playlist. But from the figures over the past 3 weeks, it looks like I might be over 200 monthly listeners once those peaks move off the, you know, off the end of the 28-day period. So that means that in 3 or 4 months, I think, or maybe 6, I can't remember the exact number, but in less than a year, I've gone from 100 monthly listeners to 200 monthly listeners. So I've doubled. And it took me, you know, when did I release my first song? I released, the first canonical Cornelis Gerard song was released in December 2016. So I released it right at the end of the year, which is a stupid time to release a song, but I just really wanted it out. That's right. So December 2016 is when I released this song. I can't say it because it's a bad word, but look it up on Spotify. That's the first song that was released, and it took me a couple of years, more than a couple of years, to get to 100 monthly listeners, and now less than a year to get to 200 monthly listeners. So why not double it again and get to 400 monthly listeners? And why not get to 1,000 monthly listeners? That's possible, right? If a couple of hundred people listen to my music every day, every month, then why not a couple of thousand? So I feel like the Hulk and Captain America. You know that there's that famous scene where where Captain America says to Dr. Bruce Banner, I think it's time for you to get angry now because this big monster is coming. And then the Hulk says, that's my secret. I'm always angry. And he instantly transforms into the Hulk, right? And I feel like my secret is that I'm always failing. Like I've just accepted failure and I'm continuing regardless. I'm failing and I'm just gonna keep on going anyway, and it's all upside. Now maybe this is a, I'm wary that this is like a self-sabotaging situation where I giving myself a way out. Oh, I was destined to fail anyway. I am wary of that, to be honest. And I was for a long time because I wasn't putting out music, and I thought sometimes, is it because I'm self-sabotaging that I don't want to work with this person, or I don't want to release this song, and I'm looking for the right people to work with and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I did think that for a while, but then when the pieces came together, the right people, musicians, producer, all that kind of stuff, since then I've been pretty relentless, and I've been really proud of the music that I've been putting out. So yeah, I think I wasn't BSing myself. I think, I actually had a vision in mind for what I wanted the music to sound like, and the pieces of the puzzle needed to come together, and I was actively looking for those puzzle pieces, and it wasn't just that I kind of had placed arbitrarily high standards on myself and others that were never achievable, because that's the thing, right? That's a danger. Oh, this isn't good enough, and they're not good enough, and I'm not good enough yet. And that's all a cope. It's a big cope. It's a big defense mechanism, so that you don't actually have to do anything, so that it's all ideas in your head and it's all big dreams, but it's nothing concrete. And I was, like I said, I was afraid that was the case for a while, but looking back, thankfully, that I don't think that was the case. I look back and think, oh, could I have done things differently? Maybe I could have done things differently. Like playing the bass. If I could go back, I would play the bass. I thought, well, if I want to be the songwriter, then I need to play guitar. But yes, you can play the guitar, but you can also play the bass, and then you can just play the bass in the band. Like Sting, right? Sting writes all the songs back in the day in The Police. He wrote all the songs, but he played the bass. That was, that is something that I kind of regret. So anyway, that's my story of failure, and I'm still failing. And some of you out there will be like, wow, 100 monthly listeners, that's not much. Potentially 200 monthly listeners. We'll see in a week's time. Some of you will think, oh, that's great. Some of you will think that's pathetic. But this is my journey. This is my journey of failure. And so, what I take away from this experience into other endeavors in life is that, like I said, there's don't put too much importance on school or official ways of learning things. It's great, I've taken guitar lessons, and I want to take more guitar lessons in the future, and I learn online like everybody else from YouTubers and stuff like that, and I have books, and I'm always looking to learn, but don't let it hold you back. And it doesn't mean you can't achieve things just because you haven't gone to the right school, or just because you didn't grow up in a musical family, or you weren't taught from an early age, or anything like that. Like, none of that is necessary. Doesn't matter how old you are, what your background is. You can just decide to do something, and you can just decide to learn something. And there's many ways that people have achieved what you want to achieve and go after. So that's the big learning that I have, that I've taken away from that, my whole journey in music. And that's something that, that's one of the reasons I'm grateful for music, because for me it has, this journey has taught me so much, and I expect that it will do more. I expect it will continue to do so in the future. So yeah, that's my story of failure.